Chapter 4 Heat. The following day, after Michael came home from church with Mrs. Cora, what had become a Sunday ritual for them, he read all about El Grande's shutout at the Red Sox in the Daily News and the Post. It was a way for him to experience the game all over again, even if he had every single pitch of the complete game in which El Grande gave the Red Sox just four singles, struck out 10, and walked just one batter. The stories in the paper reminded everybody that El Grande, who had struggled in April, had lost a game since his family had finally made it out of Cuba a month before, made it across the waters of the Florida Strait, the way Poppy and Carlos and Michael had 2 years before. El Grande's wife and two children had made it despite the fact that the Coast Guard had picked them up 20 miles south of Key West in the middle of the night and chased them until dawn with three fast boats and a helicopter. All those official persons on the water in the night, Carlos said, smiling and shaking his head as he did, and they had still been unable to catch the spider boat without Grande's people on it. There wasn't a high-speed chase on the seas, Carlos had said, when they watched the 11 o'clock news that night. There was a police escort. Michael had asked what he meant. It was the same with Carlos as it was with Manny Cabrera. Sometimes it was as if they were speaking to Michael in code. They must have They must have been tipped that they had the wife of the kids of a star Yankee pitcher on board, Carlos had said. I'm surprised they didn't let that boat go all the way to the Harlem River and drop everybody off a few blocks from the ballpark. Carlos was smiling that night, in a good mood, as he put his arms around his younger brother. We should have told them the night we came that we had the famous pitcher, Miguel Arrow, on board. Carlos finally woke up around noon, took a shower, got dressed, and announced he was taking Michael out to lunch at McDonald's. While they were there, both of them were having two double cheeseburgers with fries and chocolate shakes. Carlos asked when Michael's game was. 2 o'clock, Michael said, against the best team from Westchester. I'm there, Carlos said. Michael shook his head. It's your day off, he said. You don't have to come and watch me play a dopey Little League game. Yes, Carlos said, I do. He had already inhaled his first double cheese and was getting ready to start on his second. How many innings for you today? He asked Michael. The last four. We got rained out against Eastchester on Thursday, remember? And I only pitched 2 innings last Tuesday when we lost to Fordham Road. They must be good if they can beat you guys, Carlos said. They are, Michael said. Well, I will see you over there, little brother, Carlos said. I haven't gotten to see you pitch 4 straight innings in a month. When they were finished eating, Carlos cleaned up everything, plastic trays and garbage and cups. Maybe he thinks he's still on the job at Hector's, Michael thought. But lately Carlos tried to be very organized about everything, always wanting to show Michael he was in charge, on top of everything, even when it came to bussing a table at what all of Michael's friends called Mickey D's. Michael knew it was just his brother's way of acting older than he was, like he was Poppy Jr. When he came back to the table, he told Michael to sit for one more minute. He had something he wanted to talk about. Sounds serious, Michael said. Did I leave a towel on the floor in my room? Carlos said, You did, slob face, but that's not what I want to talk to you about. Michael waited. Carlos leaned forward, made his fingers into a steeple, put them under his chin, another grown-up pose of his. I just want to remind you that as you and the other guys on the All-Star continue to win games, there's going to be more attention drawn to you. Which means, Carlos said, you're going to have to be more careful about what you say, who you say it to. I don't need reminding, Michael said. I know you don't, Carlos said. You're smart, even if you are a slob. But you just have to keep it at the front of your brain that the bigger the games, the bigger the spotlight. Carlos made the spotlight sound like it was one more thing for them to be afraid of. His brother walked back to the apartment, then told him he had some errands to run. Michael said it was Sunday. He should be resting instead of running errands, especially if he was coming to the game in an hour. Carlos said for him to go to rest for an hour or so, and he'd see him later, in the top of the third. Michael faced 13 batters from Westchester South. He struck out 10. The Westchester team managed only one hit off of him, on a little blooper that died in front of Kellett's short and then bounced away from him in the infield. The only other ball in play was a little roller, their clean-up hitter, a blond kid, almost as tall as Michael and looking a lot heavier. hit about halfway to the mound in the top of the third. Earlier in the game, the same kid had hit 3-run homer off Anthony Fierro. The ball was just clearing the left field fence. They were the last runs Westchester would get in the 4-3 loss. The blond-haired kid didn't like looking foolish, and even tried to convince the home plate ump that the dribbler he'd hit back to Michael had ricocheted off his foot first. It was a foul ball, the kid said in a loud voice until Manny took off his mask and said, "In your dreams, maybe," the blond kid said. "What's that supposed to mean?" Manny just smiled, trying to let the kid know he wasn't something worth fighting about. "Hey, dude, you did good, just getting your bat on the ball. Don't be looking for a do-over." The best comeback the blond kid, clearly the star of his team, could manage was, "I wasn't talking to you." But Manny was talking to him, and once Manny got started, it was hard, more like impossible for him to stop. He walked out, dug the tip of his spike into the grass about where Michael had picked up the blond kid's roller. The way the man is pitching today, this is the same as going deep on his butt. Maybe he is a man, the blond kid had said. He throws like one. It occurred to Michael that they were discussing him as he weren't there. The Westchester kid said, "How old is he, anyways?" It was, Michael knew, like giving Manny a pitch he could drive. Manny said, 12 years, 2 months, 5 days, and how many hours it was until you were a lucky boy to even touch the fastball you're ever going to see. The blond kid, dug into good now, said, "He doesn't throw it like any 12-year-old I've ever seen." Manny gave the big jerk a smile that seemed to stretch from Deegan to the subway tracks on River Avenue. "No, he does not." Then he turned his head, spit, went back behind the plate, and got into his crouch. In the top of the sixth, trying to make sure the Clippers held on to their one-run lead, Michael had struck out the side of 10 pitches. Of course, the last hitter up turned out to be the blond kid, whose name they had heard by then was Justin. "You can't get any more white bread than being a Justin," Kel said on the bench when they all heard the Westchester coach call the blond boy by name. Many would say later, the one called ball Michael had thrown old Justin, the one who, with 2 strikes on him, should have been a strike too, but the ump had been taking pity on the poor guy, not wanting to end the game on a punch out. The ump had come out to clean off the plate after he called the pitch a ball. "Wow," he said, according to Manny. He looked up at Justin in a real quiet voice and said, "You better be swinging on the next one, son." Justin did swing from his heels, but Michael blew the ball right by him. Ball game. At that point, Justin threw his bat against the back screen. The ump hadn't wasted any time, calling out the Westchester coach and telling him that his star was suspended for the next game. The coach said that only happened if you got ejected, and that the ump couldn't eject somebody from a game that was already over. "Watch me," the ump answered. That was when Justin started yelling, as his coach tried to pull him away. The ump immediately pulled out his cell phone. The coach asked who he was calling. "The league commissioner," the ump said. "I want him to hear every word of this." That was when Justin finally shut up. At that point, Michael got into line with the rest of the Clippers, shaking hands with the Westchester players, all except Justin, who somehow managed to veer off and head back to his bench just before he got next to Michael, staring hard at him from a distance, still acting more ticked off at Michael than he was at the umpire who just clipped him for the game. "He can't be that mad just because I got him out," Michael said to Manny. "He must think it's impossible for anybody his own age to make him look that much of a girl." "Hey," Michael said, not so loud, "we have a girl, remember? And she's good." They did. Maria Keeler, whose parents were Puerto Rican, was second fastest player on the team after Cal. She played second base, could play third or short if she had to, and could hit. "I don't think of Maria as a girl," Manny said. "I think of her as one of us." "Really?" Michael said. "I watch you sometimes watching her, and you don't seem to look at her the way you do the other infielders." Manny turned to Michael, no expression on his face whatsoever, his voice completely calm, and said, "Shut up about Maria." "I'm good with that," Manny said, "just so we're clear." Mr. Minion gathered them out in the right field for a few minutes, the way he always did after the game, went over what he liked about what they had done today and what he didn't like, told them that he told them about every game. that the object was to have fun, but to learn something every single time they went out there. You never know what thing you might learn might make the difference between making it to Williamsport or watching the game from your sofa, he said. It had already reached a point in the season, Michael and his teammates knew, where Mr. Minio wasn't really interested in whether or not they were having fun. That was just his cover story. He wanted to make it to the World Series as much as any kid on his team, maybe more. Sometimes when Mr. Minya got going about the World Series, he sounded a lot like Poppy, which meant he made Williamsport, Pennsylvania, that ballpark you see on TV with happy parents in the stands and no highways in the distance, sound like baseball heaven. Did you hear me, Michael? Or were you in Williamsport already? I was, actually, Michael said. Sorry, Coach. I was asking if anybody needed a ride over to Crotona Park on Tuesday night, Mr. Minya said. Michael looked down at his old baseball shoes, the hole in the toe on his left one, and he said, I could use a ride. There was a pause before Mr. Minion said, Can't your father bring you? Michael, trying not to look nervous, said no. He's still not back from Florida? Michael shook his head. I wonder why he hadn't called me back. It's still just Carlos and me, Michael said, but Mrs. Cora looks out for us. Mr. Minion said he would swing by and pick Michael up at 4:30. Michael said he'd be out front. Mr. Minion said, I hope your uncle gets better soon. It would be a shame if your father misses our first play game after missing the whole regular season. Michael just nodded and told Mr. Minion he'd see him on Tuesday. Told Manny he would call him later. Picked up his glove and bat and started walking fast in the direction of the stadium. Then he was running. Jogging at first, but then sprinting, just wanting to get home to the apartment, afraid to look back, afraid they might still be watching him. He didn't want Mr. Minya or his teammates to see him crying about the father that had been dead since May.